Imagine a nutrient that could prevent cancer, heart disease, and tuberculosis. Does that sound too good to be true? Well, that's the potential promise of vitamin D. We're discussing the latest research with Dr. Brunel. Welcome, Dr. Brunel.
Thank you.
Okay, so how do we get vitamin D?
Well, there's several ways. Of course, one way is through your diet. So if you're eating foods that contain lots of vitamin D, you can get it through your diet. There's also the sun. So vitamin D is a hormone that's being produced when our skin is exposed to the rays from the sun. And the other way, of course, is through supplements, so dietary supplements. And then there's several options. And usually that's the best way. Because the problem with the sun is that the sun, of course, can cause skin cancer. And that's the leading cancer right now in North America and in Canada. Through diet, the problem is that most people can't reach the vitamin D levels they need from their diet alone.
Okay.
So supplementation is a really good way to go. The other problem is with the sun in the wintertime, we're not going to be able to produce enough vitamin D. Because if the sun's not high enough in the sky, it has to go through so much of the atmosphere that by the time it reaches our skin, it doesn't produce the vitamin D that we need.
And people aren't out as much as they used to be. I mean,
yeah,
you know,
definitely.
like 150, 200 years ago, people were probably outdoors all the time.
Yeah.
So that obviously changes how, you know, modern society has changed that.
For sure. I would agree with that for sure. And if we look at the rates of vitamin D deficiency in teenagers, it's very, very high. We're talking over 30% rates in Calgary and Edmonton. And it's the same for Aboriginal people. We're looking at about 1 out of every 3 women that's vitamin D deficient.
1 out of every 3?
Yeah.
What about Canadians? How are Canadians deficient in, I mean, is it across the board that all Canadians
It's across the board. Even in the U.S., there's very high rates of vitamin D deficiency. So I think it's a combination of us being inside more and more, not being active as much. And of course, that's a very bad combination because exercise is important for bones and so is the vitamin D. And I think that's a major contributor to the rates we're seeing right now in osteoporosis and osteopenia, which affects now a woman out of every 4 in Canada.
What's osteopenia?
Osteopenia is a form of osteoporosis. So
osteopenia.
Yeah, so it's basically brittle bones.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Not as severe as osteoporosis. It's the beginning phase of osteoporosis.
I got to ask, you know,
For
I got to
sure,
ask.
yeah.
Okay, so, you know, I actually went to my family doctor, and he sat me down, and he was so remorseful because he didn't get an opportunity to I guess, advise people over his entire practice about vitamin D, and he was so remorseful. And then he sat me down, talked to me about the importance of vitamin D, and I was scared straight. I met immediately from there, immediately to buy some vitamin D, which I take every day. So tell us what the latest research is showing.
There's a lot of research coming out right now on vitamin D. I think what's given it so much attention is in the media is the impact that it has on cancer. So what's been shown is that vitamin D significantly reduces the 3 main cancers right now in Canada, which are breast cancer, prostate cancer, and colon cancer.
So that's remarkable.
It is, yeah. It's the most promising, it's the most helpful substance to prevent cancer ever found.
Really?
Yeah, more than anything else we've ever discovered before. And the reduction in the cancer rates goes up to 30%, and in some cases even 50%.
So everybody is sitting at home right now thinking, I got to go with some vitamin D, but it's really, really important. And how much vitamin D? Okay, so we know we need to take vitamin D. How much vitamin D should a person take?
That's another good question. Right now, the recommendation in Canada is 400 international units for adults. And those recommendations are older, and they're based on the amounts that you need to prevent a frank vitamin D deficiency. And the symptoms of that would be soft bones, because vitamin D is so important for bones. Now, if we look at how much is needed to prevent bone fractures, how much is going to be most beneficial to prevent cancer rates or infections, vitamin D is also important for teeth. So loss of attachment, which means losing your teeth, basically.
Oh, wow.
So if we look at all those factors, we can see that the blood levels required, you can get from about 4,000 international units per day of vitamin D.
So if I see people with no teeth, I think they need vitamin D.
Yeah, maybe.
That person needs some vitamin D. So there's also some research that were done with children and diabetes. This is really fascinating about...
Yeah, so vitamin D has a big impact on cancer. It's also been shown to be very helpful for the immune system. It helps to balance the immune system. It also helps to make your immune system more active in the case of infections. And in the case of autoimmune diseases, vitamin D balances the immune system. And type 1 diabetes is a type of immune disease. So what's happening is that our immune system is attacking the cells in our pancreas that produce insulin. And if you don't have enough insulin, you end up with type 1 diabetes. And with vitamin D, you help to prevent that. And there was a study done in 1966 in Finland, and they gave newborn infants vitamin D, and the group that got vitamin D had an 80% reduction in the rates of type 1 diabetes.
So an 80% reduction. So that's huge. That's a really important research.
Very significant. Yeah. And there's been links with other autoimmune diseases. One is MS, multiple sclerosis, is another one where we see a gradient between north and south. So people that are closer to the equator, exposed to the sun more, and therefore have higher levels of vitamin D in their blood, are less likely to have problems with multiple sclerosis. And it's the same for several autoimmune diseases.
What are the other ones that...
Inflammatory bowel disease is another one. So yeah, there is a trend. Same with allergies. If we look at allergies in the United States, if you look between the north and the south, there's far more prescriptions for EpiPens in the north than there is.
For EpiPens, what's that?
So an EpiPen is what they inject when they get a severe allergic reaction.
Okay.
Yeah. There's about 5 times more prescription being filled for EpiPens in northern states versus southern states or Hawaii.
Because of sun exposure.
Because of sun exposure and the effect of vitamin D on the immune system. So if you have more vitamin D, you're less likely to have an immune system that would be triggered by things that it shouldn't be triggered by, like allergies, asthma.
Wow, that is fascinating. Okay, now, if you were a dark-skinned person living in, say, Canada...
Yeah.
I mean, do you need a lot more vitamin D because you've got dark skin and you've got, is it melanin?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a very good question. The darker your skin is, the less vitamin D you're producing when you're exposed to the sun. So African Americans in the U.S., for instance, are one of the groups that's most at a risk for vitamin D deficiency for that reason. So yes, the answer is yes. Of course, if you're taking it as a supplement, it doesn't matter, because you're going to absorb it just as well. It has the color of the skin has no impact on vitamin D supplementation. So
just one quick thing. People want to take vitamin D once a day. Is that what they take?
Yeah, they can take it once a day. It's very stable in our system. So once you've built up your stores, they stay with you for a while. So some doctors now recommend a single dose every month to make it easier for people. But you can take it once a day. That's fine. It's a good idea to take it with food as well, because it's a fat-soluble substance. So if you're taking it with food, there's going to be fat in your stomach, and you're going to absorb it.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here. That's so informative. I know everybody at home is like, don't run out and get your vitamin D until the show's over.